Hi Flosstube, this is Jenny McStitcher. It's Sunday, May 8th today. It is a gorgeous sunny day. It's Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to anyone out there who's celebrating. I've already been for a walk and had a nice family brunch, but now I find myself free for a few hours, so I thought I would just jump on here and make a video to share. So a few weeks ago, I made a video number 10 that was, I'm sorry, this is number 11. And in that video, I just showed you maybe 25 new charts that I had picked up, and I didn't realize how long each chart would take to show, and it was an incredibly self-indulgent video. So I thank you very much if you managed to watch that, and I even had a few new subscribers from it, which is crazy. I oriented the video wrong and it looked kind of funny. So anyway, thank you so much for watching if you did. And if you didn't, I don't blame you. I'm going to try to do a more traditional format for this video. Number 11, I'm going to show you some whips, all the whips that I'm planning on working on in 2022. You'll see they're mostly all large sized. So I'm hoping that at some point I can toss a few smalls in, but I haven't chosen those yet. I'm also going to show you some of the kitted up projects that I have to start sometime in 2022. I've decided recently that the only times I'm going to buy new stuff is specifically to kit projects up out of all those charts that I have. I'm not going to just buy for the sake of buying, and I'm not going to buy for stash or anything like that. I'm just going to try to buy specifically to immediately kit projects. We'll see how that goes. It's never really worked for me before, but hope springs eternal. So that's about it. I have three sort of news items to share with you. Two I'll share right away, and the other one I'll save towards the end. The first two things are just great things that happened in the last couple of weeks. And the most recent thing was that this past week, my cross stitch club, which has been meeting online only for the last 2 years, we were able to meet in person again. And it was just wonderful. There were 13 of us, and we met at the public library where our group formed originally, and we split into small groups at small tables where we used to sit at one large table, sort of all around in a circle. And that small table format was really nice. It gave us the opportunity to talk in small groups, talk quietly, not have to sort of talk over each other while one main conversation was happening. And then we sort of walked around. A few people brought finishes from the last couple of years, things we'd seen only online. And it was just wonderful. It was wonderful to be back together again. And that's going to be every Tuesday. So I just will start looking forward to Tuesdays every week again, counting down. I liked meeting online, but it's not the same. It's not the same as that feeling of stitching together with other stitchers. It's just the best. So that was one great thing that happened. The other great thing is that the border, so I live in Canada, Southern Ontario, and I live about 1 hour from the United States border. And during the time of COVID, Hobby House Needleworks opened up. Hobby House is probably around a 2.5 hour drive from here, including border time, give or take. So up until fairly recently, to cross the border and then come back, a person would have to do a COVID test. And it's not that I don't want to test for COVID. It's just I test when I'm not feeling well. And I guess having one of those proper official tests in another country seemed a little bit daunting to me. So I never did cross the border during the whole pandemic thus far. So we didn't need those tests anymore, so we were able to just zip across, shop, and zip back. So I went with my friend Tanya, another stitcher, and we went to see Hobby House. When we got there, Kathy, the owner, greeted us so warmly, which I have to say was impressive. I think that the nature of her shop, she's in a historic village with a lot of foot traffic. People walk along the Erie Canal there. They can have lunch. It's a beautiful sort of touristy spot. I think she must have a lot of people who just sort of wander in because it's a beautiful building and don't really stitch. So, I'm not sure of that. It's just the impression I get. So for her to have greeted us so warmly, just it was just a nice feeling. The store itself was absolutely incredible. I was blown away by it, almost overwhelmed. There used to be a store in New York State called A Stitcher's Garden, where I went a few times, and I went on a retreat there. And a lot of the shop models from that store wound up at Hobby House, so it felt familiar already, which was kind of nice. And we did some shopping. I didn't go crazy. I sort of wanted to go back again right away because there were a few things I didn't buy that I probably wish I had. So I guess that's the great thing about it only being a couple of hours away from home. I think my friend and I will definitely be back. So those are the two great things that happened. And there is a third thing, but as I said, I'm going to share that with you later on after I show you my whips and my future starts. So now, the first whip that I want to show you is sort of, I haven't gotten very far in it, and I should have. Those are my dogs barking. I should have gotten further because it's the 2021 Stitch Along by Modern Folk Embroidery. And here's the picture. I tried to use the colors that Jacob used in his model picture, but I kind of overcomplicated it, which is why I think that I got sort of slowed down with it. So here's my start. I've gotten January, February finished. As you can see, a tiny bit of March, like the tiniest bit of March. So how I'm doing this is there's a section in the middle that goes here, sort of like almost like a separate layer. And I'm using DMC for that, but the rest of it I'm doing in silks. I thought that this would cut down on the cost, and I thought that the variegation in the silks might look funny in that section. It probably wouldn't have. Maybe I was just being cheap. So the colors that I chose for this, I'm stitching it in Northern Lights by Gloriana. That's a silk, and a Dinky Dyes silk also in Twilight. So those two, they look pretty good together. And then that section in the middle that I told you about in 334, just DMC. I think that's how it is. But because I started it and let it sit, I couldn't stake my life on that being 334. So now that I look at that, I think it might not be. So I think that's basically why it was left to just, collect dust. But I will get back on that because I think it's absolutely beautiful. And I chose just a plain white linen, a Zweigart white linen, and blue and white is just, it's pretty classy and pretty, it's going to get stained or something if I don't start working on it. So I really should. So that's my first whip. My second whip this is a start from the Stitcher's Garden, which I just mentioned. I found this Kathy Barrick design, Cooper. So I love Kathy Barrick. This is the first one I've ever stitched of hers, but I love looking at all of her designs. Sorry, postpone. Let's say, remind me, sorry. In 4 hours? There. So I've been working on him at work only because I'm stitching him on 36 count. So that's just a little bit easier to see than the 40 count that I normally stitch with. So here's Cooper, a little bit sad looking. He needs more wings and he needs some tail feathers. I'm just starting to stitch the branch that he's sitting on. So I'm stitching him. He was a Mania start a couple of years ago. I'm stitching him with 2 strands of floss on 36 count, which is a bit thick. So I thought for the letters, the sampler letters behind him, I thought I would do 1 strand just to give it that sort of backgroundy look. So that's my plan for Cooper, and I'll take him back to work. My stitching club was asking about him, and I didn't have him there to show them. So that's my second whip. Actually, they're not in any order. So my third one, I have been slowly working on the Cottage Garden Samplings Songbird series, and this one is Faith. I love those bluebells and that blue jay. We actually have blue jays in our backyard. We have peanuts out for them, so we've been seeing lots of them. Now I started this series on 36 count, again with 2 strands of floss, but I kind of changed my feelings about that kind of coverage. It's just a tiny bit too much. So I've switched to 40 count, but I had already bought the fabric for all 12. So I'll use that fabric for something else. But I decided to use a hand-dyed fabric. So here's the fabric that I used. This is Iced Cappuccino by Hand Dyed by Rolanda, and I have a couple of Hand Dyed by Rolanda pieces of linen to show you today. So this is my start on Faith. It's not huge. All he's got here so far are his tail feathers and 2 of the bluebirds. There's probably about 8 bluebirds or bluebells altogether. No, 5. So I haven't made a huge start on that. But that was only a couple of days stitching actually, so I'll get back to him shortly. I'm working on one right now that I love so much. I almost don't want to do anything else. Okay, so that's my 3rd one. 4th. This is also Mania start from a few years ago. This is Long Dog Samplers Froth and Bubble. And here's how it will look finished. It's so colorful. I just love all those bright colors. I decided to do Froth and Bubble on Picture This Plus 32 count in the color Sprite. And here's my progress so far. I'm handling this like a coloring book. After filling in that first motif, I decided to just do all the black. I'll do that all the way down and then fill in those pieces or those motifs at retreats and things like that, or even at my stitching group. If I filled in, one every week at stitching, this would be done in no time. And it's kind of fun to just do the outlines. Anyway, so that's my 4th one. Okay, this one is Rosewood Manor baskets. This was a gift. Actually, this was a Mother's Day gift quite a few years ago now, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So the gift included the called for fabric, which is Picture This Plus Wren, and the chart and the Valdani threads. And the Valdani, the instructions call for the 3 strands of the Valdani right off the ball, not to separate them, which as a lot of people have mentioned in their videos, it does kind of feel a little bit on the thick side, but it's beautiful coverage and makes the colors amazing. So here is where I'm at so far with this one. I was thinking maybe like 1/4 of the way through, maybe a 1/5. The yellows aren't popping on this as much as they do on the, I'm not sure why. I probably just chose a piece of, no, those are all yellows. It is called for, but it's not, maybe it's just the light in here. It's really bright and sunny today. Anyway, I'm quite happy with that. It is a fun stitch. Maybe I'll get back to that one soon. So that is baskets. Later. Okay, this one I did show you on my last video, Owlsmoor Cottage, and I haven't worked any further on this one since I showed it to you. So I will show you again just because it is one of my whips, and I said I would show you all my active whips. So this is my start. I centered it quite wrong. It's on Zweigart Factory Dye, I think it's called. A lot of people mention this one, but I always get it wrong. Vintage Country Mocha, I think. And I noticed that Zweigart's doing a few other colors like this. I think maybe a lighter one, and they're very beautiful. So that's owls more. I think this one, I don't know. I don't know if this one's not really calling to me, but okay. So I said that I had failed to progress through the 2021 Modern Folk Stitch Along, but I am progressing through the 2022 one. I tried to find a piece of fabric that looked a lot like this, this color. I do like to copy the model, but then once I had it, I decided I did find the fabric, and here it is. But once I found it, I decided to use color. I just wasn't in the mood for stitching black for some reason. So I am making up my colors as I go along for this one, and I'm using 5260 fabric, so an uneven weave, and I'm using Tudor silk. So this color here is rose violet. Looks like the color of my cats. And here is my progress so far. And that rose violet you can see in the border, on these birds, in the birdhouse, and on the grapes for the fellows in the middle. Oh, and I guess that peacock too. So I really like this one. It's slight, because it's uneven, you can see that it's probably looking, so that's uneven too. Look at the way I do a terrible job of figuring out my starting point. But when this is finished, it will be visibly slightly different. It'll be visibly differently, you know, square than other people's. But that doesn't bother me. They don't look, especially, I think it should be wider and shorter than everyone else's, if I did it the way I think I did. So that's the Modern Folk 2022, and I only just brought that for just to show you how it comes out. But actually, we'll be over here next, I think. So that was really fun. It is hard to choose your own colors, though. I mean, it's, when I say hard, I mean I have agonized over it. I agonized over the angels and the flowers, and it's not easy to pick up or to frog on 5260, but I did it. Anyway, so this is the whip I mentioned that I just can't seem to put down. This is Strawberry House Sampler by Moira Blackburn. And here it is. I don't know why that's folded. So here's a picture of it. And I started with the border at Stitch North, and I didn't finish all the embellishments on the border. I just stitched sort of the frame of the border. And then I've started with this dirt with the little critters in it, and I'm going up from there. So right now I'm on the butterfly. And this one I actually did center quite well for a change, and there is my progress. I don't have anything to hold. Maybe I'll just hold it up to this. So there it is. Hurt no living thing. I love this. It's making me very happy to stitch. It feels very spring-like and fresh, and I love its little size. It gets just quite tiny. It's that big across and that big. It's really, it should be finished within a couple of weeks, I think. So there's that one. Now, everything else that I have to show you here are things that I've kitted up recently to start. So this first one, a lot of people are working on it, and I'm not 100% sure that I've nailed the fabric on it. I love the fabric, but I'm not sure if it's the perfect one. So I'm going to stitch Let Love Rain, and I even got these scissors. I didn't bring them out at Pastime Pieces in Blenheim, Ontario. So I love this piece, and I saw a friend, Kim, she has a Flosstube video. I can't think of what it's called right now. Craftin' Kim, maybe? She's working on this, and it's gorgeous. So I couldn't get the called for fabric. I think it was sold out. So I bought this gorgeous piece of oyster in 46 count from Hand Dyed by Rolanda. So that's a good size. And on 46 count, a fat quarter will do for this project. So it's very light, very beautiful neutral, very slight modeling, which you may or may not be able to see very well in this bright light that we're sitting in. But I love that. And it is 20 by 31 oyster, hand-dyed by Rolanda. So I bought it specifically for this project, and I bought the floss. I haven't put them on a ring or anything yet. It's this color here. This is 712, and this one's 613. So these colors on this fabric, that's what I'm not quite sure of. So I'm going to give it a try, stitch a few, maybe like a few stitches and see how they show up. They look like they actually will. And I can always change these up a little bit. I would be willing to do that. One thing I noticed when I bought the thread for this piece is that it called for 926 for this blue right here. And I felt like that blue wasn't quite bright enough with the other ones. So I bought, for my own taste, you can see I have a lot of blue around. So I bought 931 as well. And I mean, that's a big mess. I may substitute it out for 931, but I may not. I'm not sure yet. That's called for, and that's 931. I'm not sure. The 931 I think looks really good with all of the browns. Like there's an example. So we'll see. I'll try both. So obviously that one's not fully kitted up or fully set in stone yet, but I'm looking forward to starting that one. And it is fun to buy just for kitting rather than for stashing. Okay, my second hopeful soon start is another popular one, Humming of the Bees. This was like a gasp when I saw it. I just fell in love with it. So again, I couldn't find the fabric for that. It calls for Picture This Plus in the color Velt, and Hobby House didn't have it, and a couple of online places where I sometimes shop, they didn't have it. So when I was at Hobby House, I scooted around and tried to find something just by holding up the picture, something that I thought might do. So I found a piece of 40 count prairie grass linen. It's a seraphim fabric, and I fell in love with it. So here it is. It was cut to size for me, for the people, for the lady at Hobby House. So it's going to be a nice size. This is about 16 by 18, I believe. And if you hold it up to the model, it's pretty close. Maybe it has more of a general gray and less highs and lows in it, but I think it's still pretty good. And I have most of the floss colors, save a few that they didn't have in stock there. So my own LNS is picking them up for me. But here are the colors that I do have. So none of those really get lost on this piece of prairie grass. So I think that this is a good sub. I hope so, anyway. And I can start that right away because the colors that I didn't have, the colors that Gita's is getting for me, they are the bricks and a few things sort of in the center part, but the border, I'm good to go for. I have everything I need for that. And it shouldn't take them more than a week or two to get the colors I'm missing in. So I think that one should be a pretty quick, like a start on the soon side. I'm going to say that about all of them because I love them all. Anyway, so I think I might have shown you this one, Modern Folk. I obviously love Modern Folk. This is an 1857 sampler. I won't try to pronounce that because I pronounce things terribly when I'm on the camera. So I'm starting that on this piece of, let's see, Mayflower Mocha by R&R, 40 count, and it's a big piece. It's 18 by 27. That's probably twice what I'll need. And I have all of the DMCs ready to go for that. It's a lot of It's a lot of colors, considering when you look at the picture. This is just a PDF printout. It doesn't look like 15 colors, but it is. And I think that, again, I think that color was pretty close. I don't think it was called for, but it's pretty close. I bought that one on a whim. Sometimes I just don't go any further than the new section. And then I'm back. I'm in the shopping cart. Okay, so here's one of my new project bags. This one's from the Stitch North retreat. Oh, this one's pretty special. So I'm Canadian, and a lot of samplers that I love are not by Canadians. Some of them are, most of the ones I've seen have been from England and Scotland. But so I was kind of looking for a Canadian sampler, and I found this one. This is Needlework Press, Catherine Isabella Sulis. So that little house, that little yellow house with the blue roof and those hollyhocks beside the house, just said, yes, stitch me. This is called, this project calls for Straw Linen by Weeks Dye Works, which is what I bought. And I'm doing this as a stitch along with my friend, the same friend, Tanya, who I went to see Hobby House with. So we're going to stitch this as a stitch along, the two of us. And if anyone else wants to join, that would be great. Just let me know. And so she gave me all, if you can imagine, I'm very lucky, the floss for it, which I have not put on a ring yet. So look at these colors on this fabric. I think that's just going to be so cheerful and so happy. And the verse on this is about children and humor, and the stitcher went into the border here, and it just kind of made me happy to read it. Catherine Isabella Sulis lived in Nova Scotia, I believe. So yeah, that's that one. Now I think this one, I will try to start this with my friend. So whenever it calls to both of us at the same time, I think we'll start. And then I have two starts from that big pile of samplers that I picked up. I'm going to start the Nancy Hayward sampler on a piece of brown linen that I bought from Leo and Roxy. And here that is, sort of a reddy brown color. This is a one-of-a-kind dye, which I have learned OOAK is all about. And these are the colors, which should really pop on that fabric. And this isn't a huge piece. This is quite doable, I think. And I thought that looked great in this bag by Craft and Chris. She makes beautiful bags. See, now I'm doubting myself, Craft and Kim and Craft and Chris. That can't be right. One of them is wrong, and one of them is right. And I'm sorry. Maybe I'll put links to them in the description. The other one I'm going to start is the Hannah Norton sampler. Oops. This one here. This one's a much bigger piece, and I think I'm going to use the fabric that came with this kit. It still has the needle that was kitted up, and the fabric is hand dyed in 30 count. So that's a pretty big piece of fabric. It looks like maybe an 18 by 24 piece, so a fat quarter. It's that slightly see-through, I don't know if you can tell that, slightly see-through fabric that sometimes can feel a little bit stiff, but it's been in the kit for quite some time. And then the floss for that is still exactly the way I received it. I have to sort of undo those knots and do them up properly because they're just a bit of a mess right now. And okay, so that's it. That is all of my projects for 2022. And I hope to get lots of stitching into all of them and maybe a finish or two while I'm at it. So I mentioned earlier that I had two things to show you. One is just to finish. I finished the Linens and Threads, or Fox and Rabbit Stitch Along for 2019. I finished 2020 as well. I finished 2020 and I finished 2021. I have not done 2022. 2022 was a little bit too big for me to take on because I thought it would have left very little time to stitch anything else because I still work full time and I just didn't really want to do something that big. So this is 2019, all framed. The reason I wanted to show you this today is because I did show you progress pictures of this as I went along. So here it is. I was really happy with the framing. I do my own framing for the most part. This is a molding that I bought at a framing store. You can sometimes buy lengths of molding and then do the cutting at home with a miter saw and then pin the piece. This isn't a super tight. Sometimes I find when it's not super tight, it's easier to get it straight, but then sometimes you get a little puckering, which I've gotten here. So anyway, the reason I wanted to pull this down and show you is because I've had this on my wall now for well over a year. And I just recently, within the last couple of months, noticed that the butterfly beside the 2019 has had a little bit bitten off the bottom of its wing. So I probably will leave it. I probably won't unframe it, fix it, and reframe it. But I just thought that was funny. You can't be too careful when you're finishing stitching to go over it and make sure everything's done. And I do usually try to do that. But those butterflies took a long, long time to stitch. If anybody else did that project and did the butterflies the way they were charted, you'll know they took a long time. And I think they were the December installment. So who has extra time to stitch in December? Not me. Okay, so here is the best thing that has happened in my stitching life, probably. So what I want to show you is an antique sampler that has come to me through my family. It was stitched in 1834 by Mary Ann Smith. Mary Ann Smith was my step great grandmother. She was 10 years old when she stitched this. She later went on to have 9 or 10 children. I've seen different reports of how many children she had. Some of the family history has kind of become obscured. She lived on a farm in Worcester. I think I'm saying that right. Worcester, New York State. And here it is. This is Mary Ann Smith. And I hope the glare isn't too bad. So here we go. This sits on my wall. It's been in my family for some time, but it has just somehow come to my attention. It's been in storage. So there's so many things that I love about this piece. And I couldn't wait to show you. I'm going to try my hand at charting it out because at least one of my stitchy friends would like to maybe have the opportunity to stitch this at some point. So I'm going to try and chart it. I have the software. I have the desire. Do I have the skills for it? I don't know. I think that this here is Mary Ann Smith. Mary Ann Smith. I don't know what SH might be. I think this must be Mary Smith. And this W or eagle here, I'm not quite sure. I'm sorry about the glare there. I'm not quite sure about that. Here's her 1834. And it doesn't really indicate a location, at least not that I'm aware of. I wondered if this might be South Worcester or Worcester. Anyway, There's so many things to look at here. I absolutely adore the way that Marianne stitched her J's with the hook going the other way. In every case where she put a J, she had the hook going the other way. I haven't seen that before in a sampler. I've seen samplers without J's, but I've never seen a sampler with a backwards J, at least not that I've noticed. So anyway, if you have any advice for me about charting a sampler, about preserving a sampler, the back of this is exactly as it always was. I believe this was framed back in the day, sometime in the 1800s, and probably never taken apart. At least that's my impression. I could be completely wrong. It is a very special sampler, and I would like to make sure that that I do it justice, and that I don't leave it worse than I found it. My stepfather is one of a kind guy. He is just, they broke the mold. And so Marianne's daughter, she went to college and she smoked cigars, and her daughter traveled the world and had a wonderful career and had my stepfather. And each of these women were one of a kind. And in many ways, it sounds like they were ahead of their time. And so I would love to know a little bit more about Marianne the Stitcher. And I haven't found too much about her yet, except who her parents were, where she lived, and that she stitched this. So that's where my heart and my head are at this Mother's Day, thinking about all the mothers who passed this down to the, I'm going to get choked up, to the point where I can hold it in my hands and show it to you. So again, Marianne Smith, 1834. Just a beautiful sampler in incredible shape considering its age. It's very bright and sunny today, and I'm sorry about the glare. I have windows without curtains because there's just too much going on outside to look at. Anyway, so that's my floss tube for the day. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you're having a great Mother's Day, whatever you're doing. And I hope that in a couple more weeks I can come back and do another video, and maybe at that time I'll be finished my Strawberry House sampler, and maybe I will have started charting this one. So take care, happy stitching, and I hope you're having a great day. Bye now.